In college, a friend set me up on a blind date. I wasn't in a great mood because I had received a traffic ticket a few hours before. My day got worse when my blind date turned out to be the cop who gave me the ticket. He told me he wanted to take me to one of his favorite places, so I dressed up. It was Bass Pro Shops. He had a $35 steak and several drinks. I had an $8 salad and water. He demanded I split the check 50-50. My date took me to a nice restaurant. Our server leaned into me and said, "You're the third one this week." I thought he was into fitness because he had on an ankle weight. He was actually on parole and it was an ankle monitor. While at dinner, date looks at me and says, "If you just lose 10 pounds you would be a 10. I asked for dessert. Going to a restaurant where his ex was a waitress and he burst into tears begging her to take him back is up there. He said, "From your photo I thought you were too good for me. I'm glad to see that you've got flaws." Then he listed them. I went in for a kiss and she sneezed in my mouth. There was no second date. I once tried to surprise my date by not telling her what restaurant we were going to. I accidentally picked the one she worked at. We stopped by his family's barbecue on the way to our date and found out we were third cousins. He took me to a restaurant and went to the bathroom a lot and stepped out often to take calls. I thought it was weird, and then the waiter said, "You know he's at another table with a blonde woman, right?" He had 2 first dates at once. My worst first date is one time he told me to dress up real nice, and then he took me to Waffle House. Went to the fair. When the ticket guy asked if we wanted to buy 2 tickets, my date said no, just one. He grabbed his ticket and walked in. Then the ticket guy said, "I would have paid for you." We went to the Hibachi Grill downtown. As soon as we were seated, 6 others sit down with us at the Hibachi. Seemed odd because it looked like they all knew each other. Turns out my date and those people were here for a vegan protest against sushi. I still ate. When my date brought me home, he walked me in. My dad heard us come in and got up half asleep, locked eyes with my date, and farted for a minute straight. He never broke eye contact the entire time, and then went back to bed without a word. He put his phone down on the table and it was covered in tape. When I asked why his phone is taped up, he said because the government is always listening. I got a stomach bug. I was literally spewing from both ends. I was in the bathroom for 8 hours in his house. This guy accidentally texted me instead of his mate about how the date was going, saying he regretted asking me out. We both checked our phones at the same time. There was an awkward silence for the rest of the ride. One time this guy told me the story of how a ghost tried to kill him and began crying to me in a bar. My date let me out of the car to wait on the curb while he parallel parked. After 3 failed attempts he drove off. I walked home. I went on a date with a guy that kept trying to fill the awkward silence with, "Well, cheers." We cheersed approximately 300 times. Was out on a date with a guy who said he had no money and borrowed $10 to buy a drink at a convenience store. Came back with a scratch off, won $60 and took me home since I wouldn't go to the strip club with his winnings. On our first date, my husband choked on an omelette and blew an onion out of his nose. I married him anyway. He took me to Applebee's, where his ex-wife was a waitress. On my date, during an awkward silence, the boy drummed on the table while mumbling topic. Sophomore homecoming. DJ announces that this was the last song and my date said finally. Told me he had trouble finding something to wear the cat hadn't peed on. She told me she just got out of a relationship with a guy that sounded a lot like my friend Mark. I texted Mark. It was Mark. The guy parked in a handicapped spot, pulled out a pass and said, "Thanks, Grandma." Thought it'd be cool to slide across the hood of her car and tore my pants on the hood ornament. Lost the girl and my pride. My date saw I was wearing a Superman ring, so he drew a flowchart on a napkin and ranted for 40 minutes about why Batman was better. My friend had a date who proposed to her just to get a free dessert. She's single now. He printed out my online profile and handed it to me when I asked what kind of people he liked. At the movies he got buttery popcorn and handed me tongs so my hands wouldn't be greasy to touch his car with. Took a guy home and he asked me for nail clippers because he didn't want to scratch me in my sleep. Then he cut his nails on my bed. I went on a date. He took me to Wendy's and said only order from the dollar menu. Halfway through the meal he pulled out a small screwdriver and started cleaning his ears with it. My crush and I went to McDonald's. I started laughing at something he said, choked on my fry, and threw up all over him. I met a girl for a blind date once. She didn't say a single word throughout dinner, finished her meal and walked out. I then checked my phone and there was a message from the girl saying she couldn't make it tonight. Who the hell did I eat with? Hit her with my car, enough said. While at dinner, I couldn't decide between the sea bass and the salmon, so I asked the waiter, how is your seaman? Absolutely mortifying. I was really into this guy but I was so nervous. Well, this is our first conversation. Guy, you smell good. Me, thanks, I use both of my nostrils. At the end of the date I asked if she wanted to go out again. She said she was going to take a break from dating for a while. I went to a fancy restaurant thinking I was looking quite cute. When I introduced myself at the bar, my date said, I thought you'd be thinner. I grabbed his drink, poured it in his lap, said I thought you'd be smarter. I left and ate pizza that night.